Hi, I'm Kim Dillard, co-chair of the Jones Memorial Health and Wellness Ministry with a Jones Memorial Health and Wellness update. We have Dr. Shana Lee, a member of Jones Memorial, here to chat with us about maintaining positive physical and emotional well-being during the COVID-19 crisis. Dr. Lee, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, thank you for inviting me to be with this panel today. As you mentioned, I've been a member of Jones for quite a long time. I'm a retired psychiatrist, practiced in Houston for 25 years, and now I've been retired for 5 years. But I do keep up with all the current events that are going on in our lives, and I appreciate being here, being able to address some of these issues.
We also have Frankie Dillard, another Jones Memorial member, and my mother. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I am a registered nurse. I am a retired certified registered nurse anesthetist for over 20 years. But I couldn't stay at home and not do anything, so I started doing home health, and that's what I'm doing right now, working with patients who have immune disorders and trying to keep them healthy.
And you're an infusion nurse, correct?
I do infusions on these patients.
Okay. And we also have Tony Bryant. Tony, tell us a little bit about my daughter. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, like you said, I'm Tony Bryant. I have been a member of Jones Memorial for all of my life, which has been 18 years. And I participate in the health and wellness ministry, and I'm a young adult.
Great. Okay. Dr. Lee, we're constantly hearing the term social and physical distancing during the crisis. Can you explain exactly what that means, and how is this different from emotional distancing?
Well, let me just start off by talking about what emotional distancing is, because social distancing and physical distancing is a new term for us. But emotional distancing only means that I can be very close to you, but if I'm not connected to you emotionally, that I distant myself from you. So it really doesn't matter whether we're 2 inches apart or whether we're 10 feet apart or whether we're miles apart. That emotional connection that we have with people has nothing to do with the length or the distance between us. It's that connection that we have. So because of what we're experiencing with COVID-19 virus, it's been recommended that we develop a new norm, and it's called social distancing or physical distancing. And what that really means is that we're now asked to maintain a certain amount of distance from each other in order to prevent passing on a horrible and very serious virus. Now, let me just say that we're here at this panel, and the recommended social distancing is 6 feet apart. I'm a little bit closer to you than 6 feet.
Right.
But one of the things that we assured each other is that we are not depicting any illnesses or viruses that I can pass on to you or you can pass on to me. So that's important as well when we talk about social distancing. So when you are going out to the grocery store, you're going out into a public place, we want to make sure we maintain appropriate distance from each other. So people you're seeing in the grocery store, for instance, yesterday I was at HEB, and I saw people I hadn't seen in months and years. And my first inclination was to go and give them a big hug.
Right.
But because of what we're going through right now, I did not. So we stood apart from each other. We said hello. We, made statements like, "How's your mom? How's your family?" But we didn't hug. We didn't touch. But we were still connected with each other. So social distancing only means maintaining that kind of physical distance between us, so that we're careful not to pass on any illnesses or viruses that we might have.
And what's the recommended? What is the recommended distance?
Well, arm's length. So if you stretch out your arm and I stretch out my arm, that's an appropriate social distance.
Okay.
Okay. So about 6 feet roughly.
About 6 feet.
Okay. Okay. We've heard the term vulnerable population and how our vulnerable populations are at greater risk than the general population. What does the term vulnerable population mean, and what guidelines being issued by state and local officials when it comes to family living outside the home, when it comes to vulnerable populations. Give us a definition.
Well,
Tell us what that means.
Vulnerability means that you're at risk. You're at a higher risk than other people are for contracting illnesses for various reasons. So a vulnerable person might be someone whose immune system is compromised in some type of way. So that could be from an illness such as diabetes or lung problems, heart problems, asthma, or even age. And the reason why I include the age is because generally the older we are, the more at risk we are for having certain kinds of diseases, including the ones I just mentioned. Right. And so that makes you vulnerable. Also, young babies, young children are vulnerable because their immune system may not be completely developed as someone that's my age or Tony's age or your age. So we kind of have to look at people who are at risk for developing certain illnesses more than the general population. And so anyone with an immune compromised system, anyone who may be older than the age of 60, so that's what they're saying these days. And by the way, I'm older than 60, so that puts me in a certain category as well. And so anyone whose health is at risk makes you vulnerable.
And I'm gonna ask Nurse Frankie to jump in right quick because she is actually considered a member of a vulnerable population, and you also work with members of vulnerable populations. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the only thing I can tell you is that you have to keep up with your own immune system in different ways that your doctor has recommended for you to do. And if you've had certain conditions, say heart problems or previous lung problems or anything like that, you have to follow your doctor's orders as to what you need to do to keep it up. And that's what I've been doing for the past few years. I have had open heart surgery, but I don't have any problems from it right now because I am doing what my physician told me to do.
Now, in your line of work, you all have been practicing, you've been using best practices concerning hygiene just as a norm.
As a norm, that's right. We do what they're recommending for us to do now, we have been doing for years within our compounds where we do the infusions and everything. So we're just keeping doing that or adding anything else that they have recommended for us to do.
Now, in terms of vulnerable populations, we mentioned people who have certain illnesses or certain compromised immune systems. What about people who have had that in the past? You have had cancer in the past.
Yes.
You have had open heart surgery in the past. You're not currently, ill.
Yeah.
So does that still put you in the category of being someone with a vulnerable population? You're an active senior. Are you still considered vulnerable?
Well, I think you could probably still be considered vulnerable, but if you've been in remission for quite a while, some oncologists consider that as being cured. But I consider it being in remission, so I take all precautions that I can, regardless of what they say, that I need to do that, to take precautions, even if I am in remission from Hodgkin's lymphoma right now.
Okay, and you've been in remission for
18
years.
years.
Okay.
Can I just jump in right now and just say that, talking about a person who may have had some type of medical condition or may not have had a medical condition, but also are older than the age of 60, 70, 80, 90 years old. One of the things you have to think about is at that age, your body may not respond as quickly and effectively to ward off infections. So that's I think that's something important to kind of keep in mind. And that's why you're here on the media when we're saying, young people, please take care of your grandparents, because you may have the flu-like symptoms and will bounce back very quickly.
Right.
Tony, as being 18 years old. But if you're 65 or older, getting the flu, your body is more compromised, so you may not be able to fight off the flu-like symptoms as an 18-year-old would be. So that's something we also have to kind of keep in mind. So it's not just about having a medical condition, it's that the older we get, our immune system is less likely to fight off other infections that an 18-year-old might might not have any problems with.
Right.
Right.
So now that actually brings me to Tony. Now we've seen some populations, such as teens and young adults, in many ways ignore the safety warnings of healthcare officials by continuing to attend large groups, social gatherings, public places like beaches and spring break gatherings. Why do you believe younger people, for of the most part, are not taking this crisis as seriously as some of the other populations?
I believe that the younger generation is not being as aware as they should be during this time because we've never had to experience something as of this nature, of this level. Like I said, like I've only been alive for 18 years and nothing like this has ever happened to me. And I feel as though since it's our spring break, people are like, oh my gosh, I want to do something even though it might, hurt other people. And also they don't realize that even though they might not show symptoms, they might be hurting older people, like you said, the vulnerable population, because they're more susceptible to getting it. And I feel like we're not taking it as seriously as we should be. We're not learning the things we need to learn. We're not doing the hygiene that we need to, do, and that's why. I think that's why.
Maybe you can jump in, Dr. Shana. I don't think it's coming from a place of malice.
Right.
I think it's coming from a place of just not being
Not
as
aware.
aware
Right.
of how this might impact people who are your grandparents, or
Exactly.
it's not just about you at this point.
Right.
Yeah, it's about how you're impacting
Other
someone
people.
else, how you're impacting
Right.
someone else. Dr. Shana, in your experience, do instances of anxiety and depression escalate when people are unable to physically connect? And if so, what are some of the ways we can avert these feelings of disassociation?
Well, and that's an important issue because I think that one of the things that we're having to do to reduce the spread of this virus is to socially isolate ourselves or to self-quarantine ourselves so that we are not so we hopefully will slow down the transmission of this virus. But what happens as a result of that, we're now becoming physically isolated. We're not going out as much as we are accustomed to. We're unable to go to large gatherings such as attending church or going to a concert or going to even a restaurant. And so now we're finding ourselves in a position where we're having to socially isolate ourselves. And that can be very, very depressing and cause a lot of anxiety as well. So it's very important to acknowledge that, number one. And secondly, is to find other ways of maintaining being connected to other people, to our, not just our family, but also to people outside of our family. And there are so many different ways and things that we can do that we have stopped doing in such a long time. Just like picking up the telephone and just making sure that, we stay connected that way.
Right, the lost start.
That's right.
The lost start of the phone call.
A phone call, a simple phone call may stave off the feelings of anxiety or depression. Writing, that's another thing that we can do. We also have to be careful that when we are quarantining ourselves from others, that we're not just focused on looking at television and listening to the media and listening to news and getting anxious because of all the things that we're hearing about it. Limit yourself to that. We got to find other ways of doing things. We have to, and I love the word reset. We're actually learning to reset the things that we used to or normally would be doing, but doing it a little differently. So developing a routine, maintaining connections with others in a way that we may not have done in such a long time is one way of making sure that we are not getting very anxious or not getting very depressed.
Right, and with social media, that's one important way that people can keep in touch with each other. Young people have been using it forever. They're used to it. Some older people may not be as accustomed to social media as younger people. This might be a great time to start getting accustomed to social media. Older people might begin using FaceTime and things like that. So they're actually speaking in front of a camera to other counterparts, and maybe it doesn't seem so distant as it would be if there was they were not physically there in front of them. Okay, so Tony?
out something?
Yes, please.
A lot of older people, like you said, are not into the social media, like the texting and all of that, which I'm not either. It doesn't hurt to pick up your telephone and make a call. It doesn't have to be that long, but just let them know that you're thinking about them.
Absolutely.
So we don't have to try to rush and try to learn how to text in this short period of time. It's too late for that right now. But get on the phone and just give them a call.
That is great. That brings me up to my next point. Are there any specific ways in which teens and young adults who are so accustomed to constant physical and social interaction can successfully navigate emotionally during this time while practicing physical distancing, not only with other young people, but let's say with older people and members of that vulnerable population?
I do believe, since I do use social media a lot, I really do believe that teens, when they say social distancing, that they're like distancing themselves like from everyone, and that's not the case. Social distancing is just like Dr. Shana said, just removing yourself from large gatherings, so you can help other people. Like you said, you might not have the symptoms, but you can be hurting other people. But that does not mean that you cannot text people or call or FaceTime. I have two of my best friends. We talk every single day. But for the older generation, we can do chores for them, or we can go run their errands. Something to show that we're here and we're helping and we're caring. And then that we're not just disappeared and we don't want to talk to them. Show them that you care. And for example, the other day, my aunt and I went to my grandma's house and we painted her house, and she was very happy about that. The fascia boards, excuse me. And she was very happy about that, but it made me feel good for her to know that we're still here and we want to do something nice for her, my grandmother.
That's a great idea.
I just picked up my phone and I'm playing with this as we're talking about social media, because I don't know how to do this, but I think I'm live right now on Facebook.
Yes, you are.
You are live.
And I got two people who are watching me right now. So, but it teaches us to step out of our comfort zone as well. Because we're doing something that we usually don't do. As I keep referencing, this is all new to us. And so my being able to get on Facebook Live, you're being able to listen to us as we talk about what's going on, is going to keep us connected. It's going to keep us from, fearing the worst. That we're all okay, but there are certain things that we need to do and have to maintain our health and our safety. And so as we were talking about this, I just wanted to kind of include some of the things that we intuitively know, but we hadn't been practicing it. And it's just our personal hygiene. And we're talking about a virus that is spread by human contact, and there are simple things that we can do in order to prevent the spread, or to at least limit the spread. Now the coronavirus is new for us. We've never heard that, at least I've never heard that term before. But last year and the years past, we've had viruses that had frightened us. But this virus, I think, has become such a scary virus for us because it is pandemic, but there are certain small little things that we can do to take care of ourselves, simply by washing our hands.
Right.
Frankie and I were talking earlier, washing our hands for at least 20 seconds. And, how do we teach the kids to wash their hands?
Alphabet.
Singing the alphabet song, that's 20 seconds. So there's so many different things that we can do, I think, to decrease the spread of this virus. And also, while we're doing that, decreases our anxiety that's coming around, just having to deal with this.
Okay.
One thing about the kids washing their hands, from kindergarten or pre-K up to a certain age, most of the kids have learned that alphabet song. And to let them realize that this is just something that they can have fun with while they're washing their hands. Be sure to wash between the fingers all the way up to the wrist, and do that really good with soap and water. And when you finish, let it air dry. Or if you dry it on something, let it be like a paper towel, not a towel that you have previously used.
Okay. Fantastic. I think these have been wonderful, wonderful tips for us, helpful and very necessary tips for us. The Health and Wellness Ministry thanks you for joining and tuning in with us today. Please tune in with us online, Jones Memorial, tomorrow for our online service at 11 o'clock. And remember, we follow Jesus and we do what Jesus did. Love, serve, reach, teach, and pray. Thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
a blessed week.
Thank you. Have a blessed week.